education company dedicated to teaching people about entrepreneurship, business, and high performance using games and highly interactive activities. His speech today is entitled Leadership's Lessons from the Battlefield. Nick Wolff.
Thank you very much, Julie. Last week I talked to you folks about the fact that it's just recently the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And this kind of brings back some memories for me because 15 years ago I was on that same battlefield in a dark blue uniform, sweating myself off in 90-degree heat. I was part of the 1st Illinois Light Artillery Company B. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to fire a cannon, I highly suggest it. It's an awful lot of fun. But I wanted to share with you guys today a few of the things that I learned about how to lead people and run a business through watching how a drill team works operating a cannon. Now, for those of you who do not know, it takes 7 people to fire a cannon. First of all, it's called the gun by people on the crew there. So the person right behind the gun is called the gunner. So he's there lining up the gun, aiming it up or down, or left to the right. And he's also monitoring the people in front of him to make sure that he's choosing the right ordnance to fire, depending upon the situations. The enemy is close together, or they far away. You have to always change the ordnance that you're firing based upon those conditions. Now, behind him, about 10 yards back, is number 6, and he is operating the limber. The limber is the big wooden case that carries all the ordnance for the piece. And he's always listening to the gunner for what kind of ordnance to be using. So what number 6 reminds me of is the importance of having good procurement methods in your organization, because if your suppliers are not delivering the right thing to you at the right time, you're simply not going to be able to perform as well. Now, going between the piece and the limber is number 5, the runner. And that was what I had an opportunity to do. Now, the runner has a big leather satchel. So number 6 puts the round into the satchel, runs up to the gunner, opens up the flap there to make sure that the gunner can see that it's the right round. And then when it's time, he advances the round up to the piece itself. So number 5 reminds me of the importance of good logistics processes in your organization. Because if you think about it, if that round got there too late, what would happen? It would mean that the piece is not firing at the rate that could possibly be doing it. And therefore, you're not contributing to the success in battle that you normally could. Alternatively, if the piece got there too early, well, it means there's a higher risk that a stray mini ball could have hit that satchel and caused detonation, endangering everybody on the cannon crew. So precision timing is important in business, just as it is on the battlefield. Now we get up to the piece itself. The piece has 4 people on it. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Over here is number 1. Number 1 carries a 5-foot-long piece of wood, a stick. At one end is a giant, essentially a cotton swab. And it's called the sponge. The sponge is plunged into a bucket of water and shoved down the barrel of the gun twice. And this is done to cool the barrel off. Because if you put a live round into a very hot piece of metal, you might cause that round to explode. So it's important to keep the idea of cooling things off, because in business, if we are after a conclusion of a big project, we need to have time to calm our jets, to cool off, because no one can operate at 100% efficiency all the time. Alternatively, at the other end of that stick is the ram. It's a wooden block that is used to seat that charge and that round into the back of the breech of the cannon. So this is a good idea to keep in mind that at the same time you need to have a mechanism to rest and recuperate. You need to have also a system that requires to make sure that everybody at the right critical moment of time, that you're able to fire on all cylinders at the right time. So let's move over now to number 2. Number 2 is over here. Now, number 2 has 2 jobs. First of all, he stands here with his hands over the wheel well and waiting for number 5 to deliver the round. Once that happens, he takes that round, and puts it down the barrel of the gun. Okay, after that, he has another job. In between rounds, he's the person who cleans the gun. He also carries a 5-foot long rod. At one end is this weird looking corkscrew thing. It's called the worm. You put the worm down the barrel of the gun, spin it around, and you pull out any debris or any junk that may have been collected there from the previous round. This reminds me of the importance of having good maintenance procedures in your organization, because as we do our work, little repairs pop up that get neglected, people's desks get filled with papers, and you're just not firing on all cylinders. So it's important to have those good maintenance procedures in place. Now behind number 2 is number 3. Number 3's job is he serves 3 important safety procedures. First of all, on his hand he has a leather glove with a very thickened piece of leather over his thumb. Now his job is to put that thumb over the primer hole where the gun is fired from. And the reason why that is because if there is a piece of ember flying around that falls down a hole, it could detonate the charge too early. So he's trying to prevent that by covering the thumb hole. Secondly, the person next to him is going to fire the cannon. So what he does is he puts that glove on the side of the cannon and holding the primer cord, the actual thing that's pulled to fire the cannon, next to the side of the cannon to make sure that through carelessness, you don't pull that cord out too quickly and cause the gun to fire early. That's 2. Thirdly, most importantly, one of the jobs that number 3 has is he takes a steel pin, or actually an iron pin about this long, and punctures the side of the charge so that the primer fluid can get down into the gunpowder and cause it to explode. But he's also taught that if ever the gun is under threat of capture, that he takes that piece of that rod, puts it in the primer hole, and breaks off the top of it. And this is called spiking the gun. And it is done because you do not want to have the enemy capture that gun, turn it around, and fire at you. So number 3 reminds me of very important concepts of having not only effective safety practices in your organization, but also it's important to keep in mind just having a general appreciation of your folks. Because if you're not having that good feeling of taking care of your people, you are never going to generate the necessary trust that's required to have a high-performance team. Finally, we come over here to number 4. Number 4 is going to fire the gun. And for those of you who do not know what a primer is a brass fitting about this long that has some fluid that interacts with gunpowder, causing an explosion. So he puts the primer into the primer hole and takes his little cord, a lanyard, hooks it onto the primer, sets back, pulls it taut, and raises his hand, signifying to the gunner that he's ready to fire the weapon. At that point, the gunner says, "Fire!" pulls the cord, and the whole process starts over again. Number 4 reminds me of one of the most important aspects of any organization is having the will to execute. Because if you're not willing to take the time to have the will to actually execute your plan, to drive to succeed, you're not going to succeed in business. So there are many other leadership lessons that can be drawn from that experience that I had at the 1st Illinois Light Artillery Company B. And I'm sure over time I may be able to share those ideas with you. But suffice to say this, leadership and ways to find a way to be more successful reverberate in everything we do. So I ask you to take some time, look to your own lives, and figure out what can I learn and what can I pass on to others about how to more effectively lead people and become more successful in my life. Because rarely is leadership done on the battlefield or in the boardroom. It's done one person at a time. Thank you.